At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, my phone buzzed while I was helping an elderly customer understand his medication dosage. I almost ignored it. Then I looked down. Withdrawal successful, $2,300,000. My blood froze. For a second, the entire pharmacy went silent. The fluorescent lights above me hummed louder than usual. The old man in front of me kept talking, but his voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. I opened my banking app with shaking hands. Balance 080. 10 years. 10 years of working double shifts, skipped vacations, cheap meals, second jobs, and sleepless nights all gone in seconds. Every dollar I had saved for my future had disappeared. And deep down, I already knew who took it. My parents. But what they didn't know was that I had spent the last 3 years preparing for this exact moment. They thought they had stolen my future, but in reality, they had just walked straight into the trap I built for them. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, then this story will hit differently. Because what happened next destroyed my family forever. I left work without saying a word. The 40-minute bus ride home felt endless. I kept refreshing my banking app over and over, hoping it was just a mistake. But the balance never changed. 0. Rain slammed against the bus windows while my stomach twisted harder every second. By the time I reached our house, my hands were shaking with rage. I burst through the front door and found my mother, Joyce, sitting comfortably on the couch sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. My father, Adam, calmly read the newspaper like it was a completely normal afternoon. No panic, no guilt, no shame, just peace. That told me everything. "Where's my money?" I asked, my voice cracking. My father slowly folded the newspaper and looked at me with the same cold expression. He had used my entire childhood whenever he wanted control. Then he smiled. Not a happy smile. The smile of someone who believed they had already won. "You should thank us someday," he said calmly. "That money is finally being used for something important." My chest tightened instantly. "What does that mean?" My mother finally looked up from her phone and sighed. "Helen, you were never responsible enough to handle that kind of money anyway." Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Lauren needs it more than you do." Lauren. My younger sister. The golden child. The princess of the family. The one who never worked a single day in her life while I sacrificed everything. And suddenly I started laughing. Hard. So hard I could barely breathe. My parents stared at me in confusion. "Helen," my mother whispered, "have you lost your mind?" I looked directly at my father and smiled. "Did you seriously take the money from that account?" His face changed instantly. "What are you talking about?" he asked nervously. And that's when I finally said the words I had waited years to say. "The account you emptied was the fake one." Silence filled the room. My father's face turned pale. My mother stood up so quickly she nearly dropped her coffee mug. "You're lying," she whispered. "No," I replied calmly. "I've been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Let me take you back to where all of this started. I was 20 years old when I got my first real job at Morrison Pharmacy. I made $800 a month. It wasn't much, but to me it felt like freedom. At least until my parents decided otherwise. The same week I got hired, my father introduced something he called the family contribution system. It sounded reasonable at first, until I realized it meant giving them almost all my paycheck. Every month they took 80% of my income, leaving me with barely enough money for food, transportation, and basic necessities. Meanwhile, Lauren lived like royalty. Private school, designer clothes, vacations, a new car at 16, everything funded by my labor. Every morning I woke up at 5 a.m., took 2 buses across town, worked all day, then rushed to my second job at Romano's restaurant. But I lied to my parents. I told them I was working overtime at the pharmacy. That second paycheck became my secret escape plan. For years I lived like a ghost. No vacations, no expensive clothes, no dating, no social life. Every dollar had one purpose: freedom. At 25, I got promoted to assistant manager at the pharmacy, and naturally my parents increased the amount they demanded from me. The more I earned, the more they took. But what they didn't know was that I had started freelancing online as a remote bookkeeper. Late at night after work, exhausted and barely awake, I managed financial spreadsheets for small businesses across the country. It brought in thousands every month. Secret thousands. Money my parents never knew existed. By 27, I had accumulated more savings than anyone in my family could imagine. That's when everything changed. One night, while looking for tax documents in my father's office, I found copies of my bank statements, my personal information, and even copies of my signatures. They had been secretly monitoring my finances for years. Then I overheard the conversation that shattered me completely. My parents planned to steal my savings to pay for Lauren's medical school. I remember standing frozen outside their bedroom door while my mother laughed and said, "Helen doesn't need millions. Lauren actually has a future." That sentence broke something inside me forever. But instead of confronting them, I got smarter. The next morning, I opened a hidden online investment account under a completely separate institution and quietly moved my real savings there. Every dollar. Then I built the perfect illusion. I created a fake main account designed specifically for them to find. I manipulated the visible balance using temporary transfers, approved credit lines, and carefully timed deposits. To anyone looking casually, it appeared I had over $2 million sitting in one account. But the real money was untouchable. Hidden. Safe. For 3 years, I carefully fed the illusion. I left fake account statements where they could accidentally discover them. I casually mentioned my house savings during family dinners. I allowed them to believe exactly what they wanted to believe. Greedy people are easy to manipulate because greed blinds them. And eventually, exactly as I predicted, they made their move. Lauren entered her final year of medical school. Tuition payments were due, and my parents became desperate. So on my 30th birthday, while I was helping customers at work, Joyce and Adam walked into First National Bank using forged documents and my stolen identity. Then they emptied the fake account, exactly as planned. Back in the living room, my father stared at me like he had seen a ghost. "You set us up?" he whispered. "No," I replied calmly. "You set yourselves up." Then I pulled out my phone. And here's the best part. I opened the police report I had already filed online an hour earlier. Their faces collapsed instantly. "You committed multiple felonies today," I said. "Identity theft, fraud, forgery, grand theft, and every second of it was captured on the bank's security cameras." My mother burst into tears. Mascara streamed down her face while she begged me to stop. "You can't do this to your own family!" she cried. I stared at her in disbelief. "Family?" I asked quietly. "You stopped treating me like family a long time ago." My father stood up angrily. "We raised you! We gave you a home!" "And I paid for it," I snapped back. "For 10 years. Nobody spoke after that. Then the front door opened and Lauren walked in holding the keys to her brand new BMW, already purchased using my stolen money. When she realized what was happening, she rolled her eyes and said, "God, Helen, you've always been jealous of me." That was the final straw. I called my attorney right in front of all of them. "Peter," I said calmly into the phone, "go ahead." My father's face lost all color. My mother fell to her knees crying. But for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no fear, only peace. Because finally I had control. The next morning at exactly 11:47 a.m., my phone rang. It was my father. His voice trembled. "The money's back," he whispered. I checked the account. 1.8 million had already been returned. But I didn't stop the process because this was never just about money. It was about consequences. 2 hours later, detectives arrived at the house with arrest warrants. I watched from across the street as my parents were led outside in handcuffs while neighbors stood frozen on their lawns, watching everything happen. The humiliation spread fast. Local news stations picked up the story immediately. Parents arrested after stealing daughters' life savings. Friends saw it. Coworkers saw it. Lauren's medical school saw it. Overnight, the perfect family image they spent decades protecting completely collapsed. Lauren lost the BMW because the financing involved stolen funds. My parents drained their retirement accounts trying to pay legal fees. They sold their vacation property, and eventually the bank foreclosed on their home. And me? I disappeared. I withdrew my real money, all $2.3 million, and bought myself a beautiful 3-bedroom house in cash. No mortgage. No debt. No permission. For the first time in my life, every wall around me belonged to me. I moved out the same day and took only my clothes because nothing else deserved to come with me into my new life. My parents tried everything afterward. Calls, emails, letters, relatives begging me to forgive them and move on. But forgiveness without accountability is just permission for abuse. So I blocked every number, changed my phone, transferred locations at work, and started over completely. Today, 3 months later, I wake up every morning in total peace. Nobody controls my money anymore. Nobody monitors my future. Nobody treats me like their personal bank account. People sometimes ask if I regret what happened or if I went too far. My answer never changes. For 10 years, my family treated me like I existed only to sacrifice for someone else's happiness. Now I finally belong to myself. And here's the part nobody expects. The $1.8 million my parents returned, I donated every dollar of it to scholarship programs for low-income students because freedom isn't just about money. Freedom is knowing nobody will ever control your life again. And trust me, that feeling is priceless.